American tourists growing up here in America who, they have these preconceived ideas about Africa, about, South Africa. And I think that misconception is just completely smashed whenever they come to South Africa. I think it's one of the things that I always enjoy hearing about is just how impressed people are with the infrastructure, with, the just the way that the cities are built, with the roads, the quality of the roads around South Africa.
This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.
Welcome back to the Relocated South African, the podcast that tells the stories of South Africans who have packed up their lives and started over somewhere else in the world. My guest today grew up in South Africa, and today he takes American golfers to experience South Africa. Murray Collier, lucky to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jan. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Lucky. Murray, where are you talking to us from today?
So I'm based in the New England area in the United States, in Connecticut, and specifically in a town called West Hartford, so central Connecticut.
Okay, and that's kind of between New York and Boston.
That's right, yeah. It's slap bang between New York and Boston, about 2 hours to Boston, about 2 hours to New York driving.
Okay, cool. Murray, just let's go back to the beginning. Where did you grow up and study and go to school, and how did you get to America?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Johannesburg, spent the first 2 years of my life in Gaborone in Botswana, and then we moved to Johannesburg when I was very young and grew up there, went to St. David's Marist College in Sandton, and then for high school went to Kingswood College in Grahamstown. And then after school did the classic kind of gap year, and when I worked at Wentworth Golf Club in the UK and outside London, and spent many months backpacking through Southeast Asia, and then returned home and went to Stellenbosch University, where I graduated in 2009, and then started my career kind of working in Johannesburg thereafter. After a few years working in Johannesburg, I met my wife at Stellenbosch University, and my wife was born in the United States in Los Angeles, and her parents immigrated or moved back to South Africa when she was very young. So she grew up in South Africa as well, but we met at Stellenbosch University. And whilst we're at Stellenbosch University, we did a ski season at Vail in Colorado, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. And I remember, saying at that point that if we ever got married, we should try and, utilize, her citizenship and get a green card and come over and get some work experience at some point, which we did. And, we came over in 2015. The plan was to come over for a couple of years to get some work experience. And that was 11 years ago.
Just two questions. You said you worked at Wentworth, and we'll get to the golf business later, but were you always a golfer at school? Were you a good golfer?
Yeah, so I grew up playing golf. My family's very into golf. My father, who's a retired advocate, publishes South Africa's de facto report on sustainability for South African golf. So it's kind of been in the family for decades, really. And it didn't play too much in high school, and I played a little bit of college for the Stellenbosch University team. It was my time at Wentworth was fabulous. I got to meet a lot of the pros, and got to meet Ernie Els a couple of times. He was a member there. And Retief Gerson used to come there quite often. I've got a couple of good stories of seeing Ernie in the bar there at Wentworth. It was always fun to see him.
Yeah, absolutely. What an amazing experience. And if we have to kind of categorize the decision to leave, it was more an adventure decision as opposed to a push decision.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the whole kind of drive behind it, was to go and get a couple of years kind of international work experience. And at the time, my wife was with Deloitte, and she was able to get a transfer to the Chicago office. And I was working at that time for the South African government, actually, as the marketing manager for their small business development agency. And yeah, so we moved over, and it took me a long time to find work. Um, she started working quite. As we got there, she started working and started traveling immediately. So she was on the road from Sunday to Thursday every week for the first 2 years, and so I kind of landed there and was there basically on my own for most of the time, and it took me 18 months to find a job. It was a very, very um, it was a lot of fun and a lot of very interesting kind of learning about a new city and meeting new people and kind of having that freedom. But there was certainly a huge amount of cultural bereavement that came with it, kind of, having to retrofit myself, or kind of refit myself into a new culture, new community, and that kind of thing. It was, there was definitely some expatriate depression experienced at that time in my life.
Yeah, and I suppose I always ask this question because you land there. Sometimes there are other South Africans that maybe help you to to make the landing softer, but to a large extent you're dependent on each other. And was that the case with you guys?
Yeah, very much. I mean, it's I think as many people would know who've immigrated, it really can make or break a marriage. I think it's really, really something that you need to take and you need to consider and take very seriously when you're thinking about these things. In our case, it certainly strengthened our marriage. It was, we become very, very close, and we really, really relied on each other for everything. And it's my wife's been absolutely great. And yeah, I would just that's something that certainly has been a benefit of our move, is that we've really built a very strong foundation around ourselves.
Mm, mm. And you said it was very difficult to find work. How does one go about landing in a new city like that, and trying to almost make your CV acceptable to that market?
Yeah, so that's I think that's one of the big challenges is you can have as much experience as you want, but American companies are looking for American experience in many ways. So it was really about kind of just getting out there and sharing as many resumes and having as many meetings. I still remember being so green. The first few resumes I sent out, I had my social security number on the top because I thought that's what you did. It was completely stupid. But if that's just one of those things you just don't think about, and yeah, it's the the network of South Africans in Chicago is very strong, and certainly met a bunch of really, really lovely people. But yeah, getting a job, I think that my strategy actually was quite interesting. I eventually went to the South African consulate in Chicago and met with the consul general, just to kind of introduce myself and say hello and say that I had landed here, thinking that I was some kind of prince. And they very graciously took my meeting, and one of the ladies that was working there was a younger lady, and I actually became friendly with her. And she invited me to an event at the South African consulate, and at that event I met a bunch of interesting people. One of them was the founder of a startup, which I started working at free of charge just to kind of get some experience. And I spent, whilst I was looking for work, I was doing work with the startup basically for free for over a year, to kind of just get my foot in the door. So, I was really just trying to make anything work. But eventually I met a South African through a friend of mine who connected me in with another South African who was a very senior marketing leader at a consulting firm in Chicago, and I met with him, and he put me into an interview process, and that's how I got my first role.
Wow, that's amazing, Murray. And when you immigrate, you obviously you're a young couple. You sit in your budget, and you think, this is how it's going to be. Obviously, your wife's got a salary, but you don't budget for having to live off savings for a long time, and that must have been a bit of a surprise and a bit of pressure as well financially.
Yeah, I mean, we were young. We basically spent everything we had getting over to the United States, getting settled. So it was certainly an interesting and challenging time around that. Megan obviously was earning an okay salary, but we needed to supplement it somehow. So for those first 18 months, I was actually renting out. We lived in a studio apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, which had a beautiful view. So we were able to sell it as a really, really beautiful apartment, and we put it on Airbnb for 18 months, and we had people from all over the world come and stay on our couch and pay us a small fee for a daily night's rest. But yeah, we had people from all over the world visit us. I think we had over 85 different guests or guest groups come and stay with us over that time. And yeah, was it uncommon for me to have some random walk into my bedroom at night, or for me to find some random standing starkers in the lounge when I came through in the morning to make coffee? It was quite a time.
I can just imagine there must be so many stories to tell of people that come and stay in your house.
Yeah, no, it's if I think back to it, we had groups of teens from China. We had groups being buddies, bunches of buddies coming through to Chicago from Australia. We had a mother and daughter who came to Chicago to do a naked bike race. We had a couple of guys who went to all 4 days of the Grateful Dead concert in Chicago, and when they got back after 4 days of the Grateful Dead, it was quite a sight to behold. Yeah, we had a naval officer who came back to Chicago to find an old girlfriend, and he was able to track her down. There's certainly enough stories there to write a serious comedy movie, I think.
I think you should write a book. Did you ever have to chuck anybody out?
Well, I wouldn't say chuck anybody out, but I think there were certainly a couple of instances where people had come and partied for like 2 or 3 days, and they were kindly escorted out to the bottom because they needed they needed more than a shower. Trust me.
Oh my word! I mean, it's incredibly brave of you, but I think what it shows and what it tells our audience is that this is not easy, and you've got to make it work because the other alternative is go back, and you never know whether it would have worked if you didn't make these sacrifices. So that's amazing. I have to say you are extremely brave. That's well done. Marian, the decision to move from Chicago to West Hartford, how did that come about?
Yeah, so that was again through a work move. Again, Megan, my wife, was still at Deloitte at the time and was headhunted to go across to work for ESPN, the sports network broadcaster, which is based in central Connecticut. So there was never any plan to live in, Connecticut. We'd never really even considered it. But, as life does, this opportunity arrived. We thought about it and went for it. And we're very happy with the move. Connecticut's got a lot of wonderful things about it. One of them being that the properties are, a little larger. You have a bit of a garden and things like that. It's not growing up in a high rise in Chicago. So that's wonderful for our kids, for instance. So, there are there are definite benefits about us moving here. But as you would know, you know, being in Chicago, the weather was always a challenge, and we always wanted to move somewhere warmer, but we didn't learn from our mistakes. We ended up moving to a place that's just as cold and just as snowy. So we were, you know,
So you're still in the kind of same snow belt as Chicago.
yeah, very much. I mean, I don't think it gets as cold as Chicago, but I mean, when you're talking a few degrees Fahrenheit, it really doesn't matter. Cold is cold.
Yeah, and the summers are quite warm.
Summers are beautiful. Yeah, they really are. They really they get up there really lovely hot days. So I mean, as most people will know in the Northeast, you really do live for the summers. The summers are wonderful, and obviously the fall time is really special as well.
Mm-hmm. Murray, let's get to the new business, or the business that you started, South African Golf Tours, or South Africa Golf Tours. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I think that if I go back a little bit to what I was doing before, I worked at a consulting firm. I was at Deloitte for 6 years, and whilst I was there, I was working in their global growth team, helping them sell kind of large projects across their global tax group and consulting group. And then after that, I ended up leading the strategy and operations office for all of their global thought leadership. So figuring out what our top publishing themes were for to sell work across the globe. After that, I ended up at a big global law firm in Manhattan, also leading their global business development and growth opportunities. And it was at that point where I was traveling every single day, basically from Connecticut to Manhattan on a train. As most people know who work in the legal field and who are around it, I mean, it really is an intense industry. You work there's always a lot of work, a lot of deadlines, and I just found myself working 7 days a week, being on a train, for 4 or 5 hours a day, sometimes back and forth, just not seeing my children. And, something needed to change. And it was really kind of at that moment that I started thinking about, what was the next move for me. And, this idea around South Africa Golf Tours had been with me for many, many years. I'd helped numerous groups of friends and golfers figure it out and plan around it and give them advice and things like that. It was just something that I knew a lot about. I had a lot of industry connections, and it was just something I was super passionate about. I could talk about it for hours. And that's really how it came about. So, after I left the law firm, I registered the business and started going after it. And, it's been a wonderful process so far. I've learned a lot. I've got some incredible partners in South Africa that are helping me, bring these tours to life. And, it really is remarkable when you see, Americans come and experience South Africa, whether it be the golf or the food or the wine or the history or the culture or the people, whatever it is. Genuinely have a sense of wonder when they return. It's quite special to debrief with people when you see them getting back. It's seeing them experience the country that we know and love.
Mm. And Murray, as a kind of a new entrepreneur, how daunting was that first trip?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's always daunting. It's always nerve wracking. But again, I work with the best of the best partners in the industry. They have a wide network. They have the best possible people. I work with some of the best game rangers across Africa. So although there's always a risk to anything, especially around international travel, when it comes to things like weather or someone getting sick or something, those are typically out of your hands. But the people that I work with are just the absolute consummate professionals, and it gives you a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I guess also it's, you're entrusting your reputation of your business to other people in a sense. So you really have to be sure, and it's good to hear that you are. From a personal perspective, do you often travel with your clients when they go to South Africa?
So what we typically do is we have a tour director that will travel with the group throughout. That being said, there are different types of tours that we do. Some groups and some people are looking for ultra luxury, and that means that you have someone with you kind of every step of the way. Other groups are looking for a really strong itinerary booked, and they like to self-drive, for instance. It just really depends. But typically what we try and do when we're dealing with golf clubs, if we get a nice group from a golf club, we'll send the club pro and his wife or a representative from that club who know the members as well. They get a free ticket to travel with the group. So they have a tour director from South Africa who's with them. They have the club pro that's with them. So they have people that are with them that they know and are comfortable with. So they're never on their own. They never have to figure anything out. They basically just arrive, and everything's taken care of from the first time they step on South African soil to the final goodbye.
Yes, and obviously this is, you mentioned ultra luxury. I've looked at some of your itineraries on the website. People with that kind of money are often quite critical, and you really have to be on top of your game. Have you had situations where people have been unreasonable, maybe?
Look, I have not seen a situation where people have been unreasonable. I think recently there was a lot of bad weather down on the Western Cape, and there were obviously some groups of Americans that were down there, and they had some of their golf days were rained out, or they were in Cape Town and the weather was absolutely terrible. So that impacts their experience when they've been looking forward to this for 12, 14 months. They spent a lot of money and they only have 2 weeks to be there. That being said, we consider all of those things before they leave, and we always have backup plans. But I think as we know, going to South Africa, the quality of the experience that you get in South Africa, whether it be through golf or the lodges or the restaurants or the wine farms or the historical kind of experiences or the cultural immersive experiences, are just world class, and it's all underpinned by the people there. And South Africans are the most hospitable people in the world. That's usually kind of the first feedback I get is just how wonderful the people are. So we're in a very grateful position that the people and the properties that we deal with in South Africa are just world class, and they just knock it out the park each time. So we haven't had any real problems like that, and that's how we plan to keep it that way.
Excellent. Yeah, I suppose it's true. People often talk about when you arrive at the airport, how friendly, just people in general. People are just friendly, and that it says a lot for South Africa. So I think that's great. Just another question. You talked about, or you're a member of the International Association of Golf Tour Operators. How difficult is that accreditation? And I mean, it obviously must give you some benefit as a tour operator.
Yeah, it certainly does. It does. It gives you, some brand leverage, and it gives you, a network that you can be part of and lean on. And it also, helps with the credibility around, what you do and that kind of thing. It's really, about having some proof of tours that you've run, and some partners that you work with. So it's not particularly difficult membership to acquire once you've started working in the industry. But you do need proof around successful bookings, successful tours, and successful partners that can vouch for you in different parts of the world.
Okay. Murray, just from, I know you've got a marketing background, but from a marketing perspective, you competing with, I see these days, Turkey and Portugal and Spain and so many other destinations in the world. Um, do you advertise? How do you go about, selling your particular product to that American market?
Yeah. So, we're lucky enough in South Africa to, have safari, which is just, it's the biggest moat you can have around a location anywhere in the world. It really is. Everyone, wants in the back of their mind to either do a safari or is interested in one or is inquisitive about it. So that's really how we sell tours, primarily as kind of safari first, golf second. And, we're often selling directly to the spouse in many ways. We're not talking to the husband or the wife, with the golfer in the family about coming to play golf. It's usually about the experience around safari and golf, and how those and how well those two play together in South Africa. So yeah, it's we're just really lucky to be able to kind of sell and talk about safari as a primary benefit to traveling to South Africa. The other, interesting trend that I've been keeping a close eye on is, typically you've been looking at people who are at retirement age, who are traveling as a couple. They have some disposable income and they have a couple of weeks where they can completely disengage and be involved, kind of relax in South Africa. But with the rise within the golf industry of, what let's call them kind of extracurricular golf, golf experiences off the course. And you see that with kind of YouTube content creators. You see that, with the growth of simulator golf and other properties that are coming up for people who kind of want to get into golf, but don't necessarily want to step onto a golf course. With that, there's a whole experiential industry that's becoming, more prevalent around the game of golf. And people are looking for an experience that they can have whilst they play golf, and something that they can tell their friends about that's, unique and interesting and that their friends haven't done. And, South Africa really offers that. It's a really, really strong, option for anyone who wants to go and, play world-class golf, but also see some of the world's best animals and just go see some of the most beautiful scenery, and eat some of the freshest food in the world, taste some of the best wines, and bring those stories back. So, I think there's no shortage of benefits to sell about South Africa. When we put ourselves up against the other kind of, let's call them geographic golf competitors, we certainly do stand out, and very grateful for that.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing, again, looking at your itineraries, some of the golf courses that are really exclusive, Leopard Creek, the links at Fan Court, I don't know, Stain City maybe, but the recent Live event there must have done a hell of a lot to get people interested, for instance, in, what South Africa has to offer from a golfing perspective, because that is amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it's obviously one of the questions that come up pretty early on when you're talking to groups of golfers. Can we get on to Leopard Creek and obviously the links and others and other courses, and we're lucky enough to have partnerships with lodges that our guests can stay at to play courses like Leopard Creek, Jock Safari Lodge, for instance. And we really offer all access to all the best courses in South Africa. It's we're very privileged to be able to do that. And our itineraries are typically, at least the last few days of our itineraries, we typically like to kind of do the West of Cape Garden route up front and then finish up with a safari and golf at Leopard Creek towards the end of the tour. And that always leaves people with the wonder in their eyes when they fly home.
Absolutely. And you also do Rovos Rail. Rovos has had a few issues, but that seems to also be a really amazing attraction.
Yeah, it really is, and it's one of those things that I don't think many American tourists are even fully aware of until you have that conversation with them. But Rovos Rail have a number of really wonderful itineraries specifically built around the game of golf. They also do a lot of trips up into sub-Saharan Africa, and a lot of these groups that come to South Africa are interested in seeing a little bit more. Maybe going to go see the Okavango, or maybe going to go see Victoria Falls. And the Rovos Rail plays into that as well. So it's always exciting to be able to bring that into the conversation with American travelers.
Yeah, and maybe last one on this. I know you also on your website talk about playing a round of golf with Gary Player. That seems to be, for us amateurs, it's always amazing to play in a pro-am or play with a guy like that. That must be amazing for American golfers as well.
Yeah, it is. It's something that I've spoken to many people about, and the concept of playing around a golf with Jack Nicklaus here in the United States is just not even. I've never even seen that concept, be presented. Um, in all, doing most of my research. So, that really is a special opportunity, and one that gets a lot of interest. I don't, we don't get too many opportunities to do that, but that is something that is available if one of our clients is interested.
Wow, that is amazing. And Gary at 90 still hits the ball. Yeah, I wish I could play like that when I'm 90. So that must be amazing.
Yeah, no, he is amazing.
Murray, from the perspective of selling the trips and so on, what would you say is the biggest misconception on the part of your American clients?
I still think it's mainly around. I wouldn't say it says too much about South Africa, but I think it probably says more about the experience of the American tourist growing up here in America, who they have these preconceived ideas about Africa, about South Africa, and whether that be around kind of safety issues, or whether that be around kind of whether it's as a modern country as they used to, and that kind of thing. And I think that misconception is just completely smashed whenever they come to South Africa. I think it's one of the things that I always enjoy hearing about, is just how impressed people are with the infrastructure, with the just the way that the cities are built, with the roads, the quality of the roads around South Africa. I know that's a hot topic, especially if you live in somewhere like Johannesburg. But if you're taking the highway, from Cape Town to George, it's just one of the most beautiful drives in the world. So yeah, I think the misconception is really about kind of, is it going to be the kind of experience that I'm used to living here in the United States, and it's obviously very different, but it always supersedes their experience. I mean, their expectations. I'm yet to meet with an American who hasn't come back and been truly blown away by just how everything works, and how it's underpinned by the people of South Africa. I mean, just going into just filling your car up with petrol and meeting a petrol attendant is an amazing experience for these guys. They just don't get to have that kind of conversation ever living in the US. It's just, South Africans, we take that for granted.
That's so true. And people often talk about, people who serve you in a restaurant, how friendly they are. And they'll always try and make conversation almost, which is great, and it's just part of the culture.
Yeah.
Do you think that, or do Americans see a lot of value because of the dollar versus the rand when they go there? Obviously, a lot of it's prepaid, but still you buy stuff and you see that. Do they comment on that?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, from a golf perspective, it's just it's very difficult to comprehend the value you get in South Africa like for like golf courses here in the United States are costing you, $400 or $500 a round. And in South Africa, you're looking at more about the $150 market, a dollar around. So it really is, the value for money is just incredible. Obviously, then, the food and beverage is just incredibly, the value you get is just incredible. Um, and, I think just the quality of the food and the quality of the wine and the quality of just the experience on a whole. Americans are always blown away by how far their dollar reaches in South Africa. And again, just how lucky South Africans are to have courses like that on their doorstep and readily playable, because in the US, those kind of courses are all very private. And if you can get on, you're going to be paying for it. So yeah, it really is, another huge kind of benefit to going to golf in South Africa.
Yeah. And I guess now sitting there and selling South Africa, does it maybe make you feel more South African than you felt before?
Well, absolutely. I'm absolutely a proud South African. My children have retained, I've got them their passports. We are, very, very proudly South African. I think, part of that kind of immigrant experience is that, when you move to another place, you really try and kind of take on the experience of the new country and try and create that new identity for yourself. But the more and more I've been living here, it's just the immigrant experience is more about kind of learning to carry two homes with you at once. It's not having one. It's I'm constantly in that battle of going back and forth between my new inherited culture here in the United States and where I grew up. It's strange. You spend many years trying to fit into a new country, into a new culture, but you over years of doing that, you realize that your value is really based on the perspectives that you brought with you growing up. So you try and push those away to become more Americanized. But the more you do that, the more you realize that the value you can offer people here and the perspective you have are because you are South African. So it's really important you keep that.
Absolutely. Marian, from a perspective of what would you say you miss most about South Africa?
Well, I miss I miss the grocery stores. They're obviously a huge. There's just nowhere in the world that for me at least, it's very, very difficult to even compare to some of the grocery stores in South Africa. And then I just think the silly traditions that we have in South Africa. I wouldn't call them silly, but the traditions that we have in South Africa around watching sport, having a braai. The community that that's around certain things, like I'm constantly in awe of when there's a burst water pipe in one of my parents' streets up in in Bryanston somewhere, how the entire neighborhood gets together on a WhatsApp group and basically has a full-on kind of friendly chat with each other about the situation, and it's never about complaining. It's just about kind of how we're going to fix it, what's it going to, who's doing this, who's doing that, and just the sense of community is something that is very, very unique to South Africa. And then, as a golfer at heart, I miss the weather. The weather in Johannesburg specifically is the best in the world, and I'll argue that till I'm to the grave. It's just the most wonderful, weather, and just very, very lucky to have that kind of, the food, the people, the weather. It's just a great combination.
And family, Murray?
Yep, they're all still in South Africa. All live in Johannesburg. My parents are in Johannesburg. My sister's in Johannesburg. I have another sister who lives in Dubai. And so we get back at least once a year, as a family to go see the grandparents. And that's also a very, very difficult part of the immigrant experience, is when you start having children. You start to really, really feel, the guilt around bringing your children up away from their grandparents. And, I think it's almost a sense of loss. And, I think grief can often show up as guilt in those situations, because you really are grieving that time, that your kids could have with their grandparents. And it's something that is an ever present issue that you have to deal with and that you have to get on top of, because, another thing I would really caution people to think about when they immigrate is to consider that, because it really can be a difficult a difficult situation, and so you need to be strong.
Yeah, no, it's very true. One of my guests on the show talked about ambiguous loss, which is grieving somebody who's still alive, and that is really what happens in a sense. But another guest said, my kids are missing their grandparents now, but at least their children will have their grandparents with them in the same country. So that's kind of, the sacrifice that you make, but it's a long-term thing, and it's very difficult, and especially when things go wrong, and parents get sick and old and so on. So, yeah. No, very true. Maybe last question. If somebody's sitting on the fence thinking, should I stay in South Africa, build a career, or take a 2-year adventure and go and explore elsewhere, what would you suggest?
I would always suggest that you go and see the world. If you have an opportunity, and that doesn't mean you need to move to Connecticut, to the United States. That's, I plan on telling my own children this, and I would say this to anybody. If you ever get the opportunity to go and live in another country, to go and experience another culture, to go and meet new people, to go and get uncomfortable, to go and, get into a situation where you don't know where you're going and how things are going to work, go and do it, especially when you're in your 20s. Go and put yourselves in situations where you're not comfortable. It will serve you in buckets later on in life, and it just builds confidence, and it just makes you realize how lucky we are growing up in a place like South Africa. And in doing that, I think we certainly still talk about moving back to South Africa. That's something we may do sometime, but it's if you can get overseas and get to learn a few more skills and broaden your perspectives and bring that back to South Africa, that's just another plus.
Awesome, Murray. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
No, thank you. It's been lovely to talk to you, and I think thank you for what you're doing. It's great to kind of shine a light on South African immigrants, and all the positives and negatives that come with it. It's really an important conversation, and something that I think a lot more people want to talk about than they put on.
Thank you. Appreciate that, and I think you're an amazing ambassador for South Africa, and you should keep doing that. We'll put all your contact details on the show notes and so on. Thank you so
wonderful.
much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might enjoy the conversation. You can find more episodes of The Relocated South African on your favorite platform, or visit our website, therelocatedsouthafrican.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.
This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.